People were associating me with that Luke the Jeweler situation because I went to the Boosie pool party and he happened to be there and he happened to be standing on me.
Welcome back to Fame Flux, where the truth behind fame gets exposed. Boosie has sent major shockwaves through the industry after reportedly agreeing to a federal plea deal, one that street insiders claim could place Jay Prince and his infamous Dice Circle directly under federal scrutiny. According to emerging reports, this is no longer being treated as a simple weapons case. Instead, authorities may be uncovering a much wider, high-stakes underground dice network that has allegedly targeted high-profile artists for years, funneling millions of dollars across state lines. The same federal investigators probing the murder of Duke the Jeweler and the dice games leading up to his death are said to be revisiting every name and every incident linked to those nights, Boosie included. With a plea deal now in motion, questions are swirling across social media and inside the music business. Is this strictly about self-protection, or could Boosie be providing information that implicates one of the most closely watched networks in hip-hop? For years, whispers around Houston's nightlife have described supposedly friendly dice games.
Everybody in Texas know what the play is. If you rap it, you celebrity. If you like the strip club, you like to do this, you check in with them, they bringing them bad dice on you. Why you think they Duke the Jeweler, they really couldn't get him? That's why they had, come on, homie.
That consistently favored the house, with major artists leaving empty-handed. Now, with federal attention intensifying, observers believe this could mark the first time the entire system faces a public reckoning. If even part of the speculation proves true, the government's scope may reach far beyond a single incident, potentially into long-established networks tied to Houston's check-in culture. Dice games have always been a part of Houston's underground nightlife, but the ones connected to Jay Prince Jr. are portrayed as operating on an entirely different level. These aren't casual rounds in someone's basement. They're high-stakes, invitation-only events with enormous sums of cash on the table and a tightly enforced check-in process designed to control every guest who enters the room. Street insiders describe a system built with precision. The model allegedly lures rappers, athletes, and high rollers into private spaces, fills the atmosphere with drinks and excitement, stacks money on the table, and then lets the dice dictate the rest. According to those whispers, the mob ties operation uses a three-man rotation. One rolls, one holds, one swaps, while the dice themselves are prepped, shaved, or weighted to tilt the odds. The result? The house almost always wins, with reports claiming a 30% cut going to the top. This alleged machine ran smoothly until the night Duke the Jeweler arrived. He wasn't a novice gambler. Coming straight from a Boosie concert, wearing millions in jewelry and carrying serious confidence, Duke reportedly ended up with dice that weren't meant for him. Suddenly, the game shifted. He started winning, thousands at first, then tens of thousands, until he was reportedly up nearly $100,000. Onlookers recall the energy changing instantly. Smiles disappeared, whispers spread, and the air grew tense as the stakes escalated beyond control. The easygoing atmosphere flipped instantly, transforming into something tense and calculated. In a setup designed for players to lose, a sudden six-figure win wasn't luck, it was disruption. Minutes later, Duke walked alone toward his car. No entourage, no visible security, just him. Gunshots echoed before bystanders even understood what was happening. Moments later, he was gone. Jewelry untouched, cash untouched. This wasn't a robbery, it was about power and control. By winning so big, Duke had broken the system's control, and the consequences arrived fast. Duke the Jeweler wasn't an unknown figure. He was a respected Chicago craftsman with a client list filled with top-tier names, custom pieces valued in the millions, and a reputation for quality and reliability at major hip-hop events. When he came to Houston, it appeared to be purely business, but that assumption became fatal. Every detail of the aftermath raised red flags for investigators. Duke's Louis Vuitton bag, reportedly stuffed with over $1 million in custom jewelry, didn't leave the game with him. It ended up in Boosie's associate's possession, who later claimed Duke asked him to hold it during the game, and that it simply stayed with him after the shooting. Yet Duke's phone went dark immediately after pinging near that associate's studio. Federal investigators now allege they have surveillance footage, text messages, and witnesses placing Boosie's circle at the center of Duke's final hours. Adding weight to the case, the feds have reportedly zeroed in on Boosie's nephew as a possible shooter, treating this as far more than a simple homicide. The picture being drawn suggests an organized system unraveling under scrutiny, and authorities are pressing hard. Federal agents have now split Duke's murder into its own standalone probe, signaling undivided attention and high stakes. That Louis Vuitton bag isn't just luggage. It could be the centerpiece of evidence that first placed Boosie's name inside federal files. This development explains why the current plea deal may be about far more than a 2023 gun charge. Prosecutors deliberately separated Duke the jeweler's murder investigation from Boosie's other legal cases, a classic pressure tactic. By isolating it, they can apply maximum leverage, offering leniency on one case while extracting answers on another. It's a strategy designed to narrow the focus, increase pressure, and break silence inside any circle of associates. The Duke case is riddled with red flags for Boosie's camp. Duke's phone, the final digital breadcrumb of his life, pinged near Boosie's recording studio before going dark. That kind of data is impossible for investigators to ignore. Federal teams also uncovered physical evidence inside Duke's rental car, allegedly tied to individuals connected to Boosie's inner circle, reinforcing their case and deepening the pressure. Add to that a growing number of witness statements, and it's no wonder investigators are circling tighter than ever. What's even more damaging is the mounting rumor mill. Whispers that some people close to Boosie may already be cooperating. For prosecutors, that's fuel. For Boosie, it's a potential breaking point that could reshape the case entirely. Once federal agents secure even one cooperator, the entire investigation can snowball. Narratives shift, timelines blur, and the fastest way for someone to protect themselves becomes giving investigators exactly what they want. For a defendant facing a federal gun case, a separate murder probe, and a potentially compromised inner circle, cutting a deal can start to feel like the only escape route. In this situation, the two biggest potential targets are J. Prince Jr. and his father, J. Prince. Already, two of the highest-profile dice games tied to their network have ended in tragedy. Duke the jeweler dead hours after leaving one event and Takeoff killed outside another. Different nights, different circumstances, but the same pattern. Massive sums of money, influential names, and gunfire before dawn. Industry commentators have been vocal. WAC 100 has publicly accused J. Prince Jr. of orchestrating dangerous setups where high-profile rappers are lured into unwinnable games. Charleston White echoed those concerns, alleging that these dice nights use weighted dice and tight control, creating situations where even a lucky win can make someone a target before cashing out. The picture forming is one of a hidden economy where trust is an illusion and power plays unfold quietly behind the scenes. If Boosie were to cooperate and provide names from the inside, it could unravel Houston's long-standing check-in culture overnight. That would not only end a powerful system, but also ignite ripple effects across the industry, law enforcement, and street networks simultaneously. Federal attention is no longer confined to the streets. It's expanding into boardrooms, promoters, and anyone who has profited from these underground games. Word on the street is that a growing number of artists are quietly pulling back from Houston events entirely. Some are skipping shows, declining walkthroughs, and refusing to appear anywhere mob ties might be present. Officially, J. Prince Sr. has denied that any check-in system exists, but insiders describe the pressure as very real, just more discreet, handled through J. Prince Jr.'s network. After two high-profile deaths tied to dice games, even some of hip-hop's boldest names are reconsidering whether the risk is worth it. That fear isn't limited to gunfire. It's about getting caught up in politics and obligations that are hard to escape. Veteran voices in the culture have been warning younger artists for months to steer clear of Houston's dice scene. They stress that once you're inside, it's no longer about winning or losing money. It's about the alliances you've created and the targets you may unknowingly attract. Take Finesse 2 times as an example. Once closely aligned with J. Prince Jr., he later aired out grievances publicly, claiming he was stiffed financially and hinting at behind-the-scenes disrespect. Rumors soon followed about personal scandals and broken agreements, intensifying speculation that J. Prince Jr. is losing allies faster than he can replace them. It's not just individual artists feeling the pressure. Record labels are quietly reevaluating their plans, instructing staff and talent to distance themselves from any events tied to the dice game controversy. With federal attention rising and headlines stacking up, the Houston nightlife scene that once attracted celebrities is now becoming a cautionary tale of how quickly power, influence, and street credibility can turn into liabilities under a national spotlight. They know one bad headline can collapse an entire rollout, and no brand wants to be tied to a situation that's one Instagram live away from becoming a crime scene. This is why, if Boosie really does start naming names, the ripple effect won't just hit Houston, it could shake the entire rap game. But before looking at the broader impact, it's important to focus on mob ties and how deep the roots may run. Up until now, most of the conversation around mob ties has existed in the court of public opinion. But behind the scenes, the federal government is reportedly planning a much larger and more coordinated play. Sources and local reports hint at operations capable of reaching far beyond the dice games, potentially touching areas of law enforcement itself. Recent federal sweeps in Houston have already dismantled entire drug networks and violent crews, with agencies like the FBI, DEA, ATF, and ICE working hand in hand with HPD. And here's the key detail. These weren't random raids targeting small players. They were deliberate strikes aimed at dismantling entire structures, from the shooters on the street to the financial operators and silent partners. It's the exact blueprint that could be activated if mob ties ends up next on the list. If that blueprint is deployed, it won't just disrupt one dice game. It could destabilize an entire underground economy that's been tied to hip-hop's touring circuit, security culture, and nightlife infrastructure for years. If federal agencies decide to target mob ties in full force, their first move won't be flashy arrests. It will be quiet pressure. Investigators typically start by isolating weaker links inside an organization: low-level staff, security teams, money runners, or people already facing unrelated charges, and offering them a way out in exchange for information. This approach is called flipping, and it's been used to dismantle some of the largest criminal enterprises in American history. If prosecutors believe mob ties is an organized network rather than a loose affiliation, they can deploy the same RICO statutes once used to take down mafia families, major cartels, and gang structures coast to coast. Under RICO, a person doesn't have to personally commit a violent act to be charged. Just being part of the organization's pattern of activity can be enough. The fear within the industry is that once one or two people inside mob ties start cooperating, the entire structure could unravel. Suddenly, bank records, encrypted messages, and surveillance footage begin to make sense when combined with insider testimony. That testimony can link names to roles to transactions, and transactions to specific crimes, a chain reaction of evidence. Even more worrying for those tied to these networks is that federal agents are reportedly combing through years of dice game footage, venue security logs, and private jet manifests. They're matching patterns of who showed up where, who moved money afterward, and who communicated with whom in the hours before and after key incidents. If that paper trail holds, the next headlines about mob ties won't be rumors. They'll be indictments. Whispers across Houston say there may already be sealed warrants tied to the crew, the type of warrants that can quietly flip into arrests overnight without warning. With HPD's Criminal Intelligence Division coordinating with multiple federal task forces, every favor, handshake, or off-the-record connection within that network is now under a microscope. All it could take to detonate the whole structure is one undeniable piece of evidence. For example, a leaked video from one of those dice nights. If footage surfaces showing who handled the money, who approved certain plays, or who was physically in the room, the entire story stops being gossip and starts becoming case-closing material for prosecutors. That's where Boosie's situation becomes especially dangerous. If he's truly cooperating, federal agents could offer him protection or leniency in exchange for insider intelligence. But on the street, that kind of protection can transform from a lifeline into a liability, painting a target on someone's back almost overnight. Once people believe you're feeding information to the other side, your name stops appearing in whispers and starts appearing in threats. It's a line that can't easily be crossed back from, and it reshapes reputations permanently. What's your take on this developing situation? Could Boosie's cooperation be the key that unravels Houston's long-rumored dice network? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, smash that like button, and subscribe so you never miss the next big update from the world of hip-hop and beyond.